committee members and public who've come in today. To everyone else. Welcome to Lichfield District Planning Committee on Monday, the 24th of November 2025. This meeting is publicly broadcast and is streamed via our live website and available on YouTube. I would therefore ask that you conduct yourself appropriately and in an appropriate manner. I would also point out that the cameras are extremely sensitive and can pick up you whispering to the person next to you and what it is that you say. That goes for the committee members as well. I welcome those present in the public seating area and ask that you be respectful to the committee members, its officers, as well as those that are speaking. I ask that you remain seated and quiet during these proceedings. My name is Councillor Checkland, Chair of Lichfield Planning Committee. In a moment, I will ask everyone participating in this meeting to introduce themselves. Before doing so, can I remind everyone in the meeting to ensure that their mobile phone electronic devices are switched off or muted throughout this session. For those who have registered to speak, please ensure that your content is relevant and material to the debate in hand and you are mindful of the allotted time that you're allowed to speak. If you go over time, you will be asked to stop immediately. When speaking, for the particular benefit of those who are at home listening on YouTube, and as well as those in the room, particularly those that are hard of hearing, like myself, who wear hearing aids, can you please speak clearly and loud enough so that the rest of the room can hear? The microphones are actually fitted into the roof of this, the ceiling of this room, and hence they're so sensitive. Planning Committee is a non-political, quasi-judicial committee bound by the National Planning Policy Framework, which is forever changing. Lichfield's local plan and supplementary planning guidance. Our decisions are informed by planning considerations tied to these policies, but it is not a pure science. We must weigh up the benefit and harm when coming to a view. The arrangements for conducting this meeting will be as follows. Officers will introduce the application. Any members of the public, applicants or agents who have registered to speak will then be invited to address the committee in turn. Members are reminded to keep their questions to the point and matters of clarification for planning issues only. Technical questions or clarification of detail of the application will generally be directed to the officers. Committee members will then discuss and decide on the officers' recommendations on each application. May I also be clear that we cannot receive questions or comments from anyone in the public seating area. Please be assured that the committee will aim to thoroughly question and consider all matters before it in coming to a decision. And bear in mind, this is our second meeting in relation to this. There's been plenty of time to consider everything said at the last one. When we come to vote on each application, I will ask all members to confirm that they are minded to approve the recommendations in the report by raising their hand. I will then ask those of you voting against the recommendations or abstaining to confirm the specific planning reasons you are doing so. In the event of the vote being carried against the officer's recommendation, I will ask officers to comment on the validity of the planning reasons, and if recommended by officers, will ask members to vote again on whether to defer the item for a further report for those reasons. And that was the case at the last meeting. If for any reason a member is not present for the whole of the item, they will be asked not to vote on the application. Councillor Ashton was unavailable for last week, but is here this week. Thank you for coming. But unfortunately, you won't be able to actually participate or take a vote because of the continuation. I will now ask all members and then officers participating to introduce themselves. I'll start on my left with my Vice Chair.
Good evening, everybody. Councillor Derek Cross of Fradley and Orwas board member.
Good evening, Richard Stevenson, also Fradley and Orwas ward member.
Councillor David Salter, Shenstone.
Good evening, Councillor Tom Marshall, and I represent the Armitage with Handsacre ward.
Andrew Rushton, Whittington Street, Henwall.
Councillor Hugh Ashton, Stowe ward.
Councillor Jane Ankerfield, St John's ward.
And if we can do the officers now, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Richard Thomas from Staffordshire County Council Highways.
I'm Adam Bushnell, Frivolous Planning and Projects Officer from Staffordshire County Council.
Stuart Evans, Legal Advisor.
Ian Long, Managing Planning Consultant for LWMTS and Case Officer for the application.
Sinead Cartwright, Governance Officer.
And Will Stevenson, Principal Governance Officer.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, apologies that I've had so far this evening are Councillor Evans, Councillor S. Taylor, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Mears, Councillor Cleverly.
Councillor Powell has given me his.
Councillor Powell. Does have a
Also-
tendency to arrive at 10 past.
Rise on behalf of the Chairman of Fradley Parish Council, who would like to attend tonight, but
I understand. Yes, I understand. David Latham's is poorly. You can pass on the committee's best regards because he was a district councillor until very recently. The minutes of the last meeting, the revised minutes are within the addendum that came out, the supplementary pack. If you've had an opportunity to look at those, are there any issues arising from those minutes as in the supplementary? Okay, can I move those as accepted? Okay. Right, moving on to the application. As I say, this is a continuation of a matter that was deferred at the last meeting. So the points that we are looking to address are those that were raised as the reasons for the deferral. Declarations of interest, anybody? Apart from the fact, I'll declare the fact that we all know Councillor Stevenson, and I think we've all received emails from both sides, both the applicant and objectors. So is there anyone in?
Yes, Chair. I'm the ward councillor for Fradley and Orrewas.
Yep.
the same declaration as I did at the last meeting.
And you'll be speaking
on behalf of the ward.
on behalf of the board. Thank you. Any further declarations? Thank you. Well reminded. Moving back to the application, this is land east of Fradley Lane, Fradley, Lichfield, number 25/00046/OUTM. And this is going to be presented to us by Ian Long.
Chair. So this is an outline planning application submitted by Bloor Homes in respect of the erection of up to 230 dwellings, including community facility, affordable housing, landscaping, open space, drainage and associated infrastructure, with all matters reserved except for access to Fradley Lane. It is being brought back to committee due to seeking clarification on potential for mineral extraction, clarification on healthcare contribution details, the highways arrangement for Fradley Lane in the junction with Church Lane, clarification on the community facility land and its marketing strategy, and clarification on sewerage and drainage. Just take you briefly through some slides that are a continuation of the previous presentation. So this is an extract of the location plan showing the location of the site to the east of Fradley, between Fradley and the A38. This is an extract of the illustrative master plan showing indicatively how the site could be developed to accommodate up to 230 dwellings, with the aforementioned additional features such as the community facility land, drainage, footpaths and ample open space. And then just a couple of CGI images. So this is showing the site from an aerial view looking northeast, with the A38 to the right hand side of the image, and the site as it would be between the A38 and Fradley Village. And just again a CGI just showing the site access, which would be a roundabout, 3-arm roundabout off Fradley Lane. So regarding the amended proposed site access layout as shown here, the Y junction as existing is now proposed to be retained and incorporated into the highways improvements on Fradley Lane. This will allow for the locally important finger post to be retained, also ensuring the wayfinding and local historical significance remains. Staffordshire County Council Highways, as the local highway authority, were consulted on the amended plan and confirmed their satisfaction with the proposal. Richard, do you have anything to add on that?
No, just to say, from my perspective, it seemed to address the concerns raised by speakers at the committee. So we're comfortable with that layout as per one on the screen.
Thanks, Richard. So just briefly, it's just a slide, just summarising the reasons for deferral. So firstly, on the mineral extraction point, concern was raised at the 3rd November committee regarding the site being located within a mineral safeguarding area for superficial sand and gravel, and the potential for Bloor Homes to seek to extract the mineral from the application site by way of quarrying in advance of developing the land for housing. Mineral resource assessment submitted with the application presented a scientific assessment of the total theoretical quantum of mineral contained within the site, concluding that theoretically about 356,000 tonnes of sand and gravel could be extracted. Importantly, this would require a full depth excavation in order to be achieved. A full depth excavation would be unattractive to Bloor Homes for a number of reasons. Firstly, if it was to be pursued, a significant amount of land filling would be required before the residential development of the site could occur due to the presence of shallow groundwater, which could significantly impact upon viability of proposals as well as impact delivery. Further to this, the applicant's own assessment in the mineral resource assessment concluded that the economic viability of the site would be limited by the reduced workable area required due to standoffs with existing residential properties, highways and utilities. In order to provide absolute certainty regarding the site not coming forward as a quarry, condition 37 has been added, preventing the site from being used for quarrying activities. Condition 18 has been strengthened to include the requirement for a materials management plan be provided to identify the amount of mineral likely to be disturbed by groundworks or extracted and reused on site during the construction phase. Regarding the healthcare contribution, further clarification was sought from members regarding how this has been arrived at. Included in the committee report, the applicant engaged with the Integrated Care Board during the course of the application to ascertain what solutions the ICB had identified in order to address the acknowledged healthcare issues in Fradley. The ICB concluded that a contribution from the development towards further incremental growth at the practice in Orrewas would be appropriate in advance and in conjunction ultimately with a larger, more strategic solution to be delivered in the future. As such, it is considered that the contribution as sought by the ICB is proportionate and appropriate in respect to proposed development. We touched on the highways point, so I'll move on to the community facility land and its marketing strategy. So regarding the community facility land, concern was raised regarding the marketing period being too short. Since the last committee, the applicant has returned with an updated marketing strategy for the land, which now includes for a total marketing period of 24 months, which is more than double the period as previously reported. Additionally, the time period for the exchange of contracts between the identified delivery partner and Bloor Homes has been extended from 8 weeks to 12 weeks. Finally, a clause is to be inserted enabling the parish councils to come forward for land early should they wish to do so. As such, the concerns raised previously are considered to have been adequately addressed. Further clarification was sought regarding drainage at the previous. The outline drainage strategy as submitted with the application has established that the proposed development would be restricted to a greenfield runoff rate by way of infiltration, which should say that there would be no additional water entering the existing drainage systems than compared to currently. The water runoff would be mitigated and dealt with entirely within the red line of the planning application. The LLFA and Severn Trent Water both concluded no objection to the outline drainage strategy. The applicant has offered to undertake a survey and any required maintenance to the existing drainage systems along Church Lane. Condition 12 has been amended, securing the provision of detailed drainage plans for both the disposal of foul and surface water flows to be provided to the council for approval prior to the commencement of development. Also included in the committee report, paragraph 1.1, is the list of planning obligations that will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. Paragraph 1.29 includes a summary of some slight amendments to the conditions list. Pick up on some of the points that were raised following the last committee. Also to note, supplementary item, we received an email from Fradley Parish Council, which included a number of images and videos showing flooding on Church Lane. Note, and there was an additional local resident comment. However, it's considered that the items that they raised have been addressed through the committee report for the first committee and for as the addendum for the deferred item. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've got 3 speakers. We're not setting a precedent, but normally on a continuation, once something's been deferred, it is not a custom for other people to speak again. I don't see any disadvantage to that happening. So there are 3 speakers, but I will ask you to stick to the points which the planning committee was deferred for, which is the mineral, the health, the highways, community facility, and the clarification of sewage and drainage. I suspect that the mention of a badger might get in there. But if I can ask the objector, and speaking for the objectors on this occasion is John Seeley. If you want to come forward, were you at the meeting last week?
Indeed, Chair.
You were indeed. You may continue to participate.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. I'll try and be.
Right. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay.
The time will start as soon as you start speaking.
All right, now I'm speaking on behalf of the local residents in Fradley. Just a quick key point from the last meeting. It was over 1,100 people have signed the petition, not 600, all objecting this proposal. So just get that. Now, transport and access. Highway concerns we find are central to this objection. The proposal is expected to generate around 460 plus new cars and hundreds of additional residents. The local transport network in Fradley at the moment cannot absorb this. With the HS2 on the A38, especially the way the displacement of traffic is pushing more vehicles through Fradley Lane, Church Lane, Hayend Lane, Turnbourne Road and Common Lane, which being the only route to the Stirling Centre where we have our local shops. Now, Common Lane at the moment has not been mentioned yet, is a huge problem with HGVs from the local distribution centre blocking it up and blocking all the roads on a 24-hour basis. So that alone will cause an issue if we get traffic from Fradley Lane being closed for the development being sent through Common Lane. Just wouldn't work and would be extremely dangerous. We'd pretty much come to a standstill. As for the flooding, I live on Church Lane. It is quite severe and it floods regularly with many reports, as you all know. The existing drainage cannot cope with the current load, let alone another 230 new homes. Paving over the greenfield land, which removes drainage naturally and increases surface water runoff. This will exacerbate the existing problems, potentially putting surrounding homes at risk. The council's own climate and sustainability commitments should prevent this unsuitable development that Bloor Homes have put forward. They've offered to do a survey. We know we've had surveys done before. All the drains in Fradley Lane are blocked with roots. They're old. If they were to be repaired, I believe that we'll just push that problem somewhere else in the village. There's been 20 new photos and videos uploaded recently from the recent things. It clearly shows they are just not blocked drains. They are severe. Infrastructure on the healthcare is in terrible pressure at the moment. In the past 7 years, over 1,000 new homes have been built in Fradley, yet we've had no contributions made to expand the local GPs that are already overstretched. Only surgery is under extreme pressure as it is. We question the sustainability of adding hundreds more residents when there is little medical facilities and new residents will be forced to commute, putting further strain onto the local roads and the environment. The contribution of £206,211 offered by Blair, thank you very much, will barely cover the cost of the foundations for a new car park at Oliwas. As for the public space, we already have a church hall, we have a village hall, typically underused. Very unlikely to get NHS to build on that land. And within the first 6 months of 2025 of this year, 8 pubs a week have been closing down permanently. So the chance of a brewery taking on that land is going to be slim. And we was promised one at the Stirling Centre that we are still waiting for. As for the minerals, the land we think and the village should be left to keep its potential to extract this resource in the future if and when it is needed. So in summary, Chair, this proposal would destroy our important greenfield site and the village's rural settings, overburden our already stretched infrastructure, add hundreds of cars to our unsafe roads, increase our flood risk, and the community of Fradley have spoken with one clear voice that the material planning grounds for refusal are many and well evidented with objections. I therefore urge the committee to stand with the residents and uphold the principles of sustainability development and refuse this application in its entirety. I thank you for your time, Chair, and thank you for your comment.
Mr. Seeley. If I could emphasise again, if you've heard the matter for these various points that are on the front of the presentation, I understand you didn't speak last time, and it's emphasising some points that have previously been made at the last presentation. If you can try and direct your comments towards those, I'd appreciate it. If they stray a bit, also cope with that, but not too much, please. Councillor Stevenson, if your 10 minutes will start as soon as you start to speak when you're sat in the appropriate place. You can sit down if you want, or you can stand. It's entirely up to you.
I'll just sit down if you don't. I've been standing up.
You stay.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak tonight. This continuation of the previous meeting, and also thanks to Bloor Homes for the briefing note that they've sent us all, and to the hard work that the officers have done on the application since the last meeting. I will confine myself to some technical matters concerning the deferred matters. I might just stray into badgers since the applicant themselves have raised that issue. If I could just address the, as we've heard, passionate speech about flooding on Church Lane. So the offer by the applicant to survey, not just to survey, but undertake any required maintenance work is very welcome indeed. I'm sure you'll all understand that confidence in the planning system is not exactly high in Fradley at the moment. And I think it would be a comfort to the residents if that was actually a condition or a pre-application or pre-commencement condition of the application. I can't see there should be any problem with that, since you've got a willing applicant said in writing that they are going to undertake this required maintenance and fix the problem that is in Bradley Lane, and you've got evidence before you of the severity of that problem. And I would suggest that's entirely consistent with National Planning Policy Framework paragraphs 159 to 169. Regarding the finger post and the Y junction, again, the removal of condition 26 is welcome, and we're very grateful for that. I would just ask, since I now think it comes under condition 6 and one of the bullet points, that we could just make it a little bit clearer in the bullet point that we're not just retaining the finger post at the Y junction, but actually retaining the Y junction as well. If we put the word "and" in, it's a bullet point in 6. Regarding the movement of traffic and to do with that all important junction to the village, again, it would be a great comfort to local residents if a condition was inserted there that makes sure that Fradley Lane is functional at all times whilst this development is taking place, because if that lane is shut, it will force traffic down the road that the residents have just been complaining quite correctly about. On the quarrying, again, I've got to say it was never our contention that Bloor Homes might wish to extract minerals. It was our contention that somebody else might wish to extract minerals. The committee will note that one of the reasons for not extracting minerals there is shallow groundwater, where the applicant intends to disperse groundwater into the ground there, which may be a problem during the winter months. But I welcome the insertion of condition 37. I would merely ask that the legal advisor to the committee confirms that the committee has got the lawful power to insert such conditions, as it does actually fall under the county council's remit and not this council's remit. I think the land for community development or use has been discussed, and I welcome in the change there. I'm very pessimistic that any use will be found for that land. However, I don't see it as a condition in the application or in the officer's recommendations. I wonder whether the very welcome timetabling, I might be wrong on that, should be included as a condition. And finally, I would actually like to, you'd be very surprised since I'm a veterinary surgeon if I wasn't interested in wildlife. And Councillor Marshall did raise this at the last meeting, and the applicant has indeed raised it again in the information and briefing note they've sent to all members. There are two badger sets on these. They're annexes to a main set that we don't know where that main set is. I have to say the ecology report submitted was surprisingly done for Bellway Homes. I don't know why the Bellway Home should have commissioned that report, or whether that's just a typo. But if it's a typo, it doesn't speak well of the attention to detail of those who wrote it. But badgers are a very sensitive subject, and there's potential for huge reputational damage to this committee, the council, and for homes if this is not dealt with carefully. I did consult with the Badger Trust on this matter, and the Badger Trust very helpfully suggests two conditions that should always be inserted for this kind of application where a set is present. One of those is that there should be a survey, a further ecological survey concerning the badgers 3 months prior to the commencement of development. An additional badger survey report submitted. The problem is, of course, if the main set is off-site, as it would appear to be, badgers being very territorial will continue to return to their existing sets, and that can cause problems during the build. But it can also cause problems, of course, once residents have taken place and causing conflict between the wildlife and the new residents there. So the Badger Trust also recommend that prior to first occupation use of the site, a report is prepared by an appropriately qualified and experienced ecologist demonstration the implementation of the badger mitigation and enhancement measures. So those are standard conditions which the Trust strongly recommends is inserted there, which I didn't actually see in the application. I'm prepared to concede there's no great crested newts because the DNA survey was negative, and I do feel that the A38 will be a pretty substantial obstacle to the migration of the crested newts.
Stationary.
Sorry?
It's usually stationary.
Yes, yeah, the great crested newts lie on my side, the A38 it would seem. Members of the committee, I just wanted to go through those technical issues with you. I hope those are constructive comments there, but I would say that this application, of course, is a speculative application outside of the designated development area. So I do hope, and I'm sure, the committee will subject it to forensic examination and cross-examination of the proposals. Thanks very much.
Very much. Final speaker is speaking on behalf of the applicant, Emma Foster. You have 5 minutes, which starts when you start to talk. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Law Homes would like to respond to the 5 key matters which resulted in our planning application being deferred earlier this month. These are items that were all set out in your member briefing document that you received and addressed fully in the Planning Officers Committee report that you've all been presented with this evening. Taking each of those matters in turn, Matter 1, highways. Law have revised the design arrangement for the Fradley Church Lane junction to retain and enhance the existing Y junction. These amended highways arrangements will also allow for the retention of the finger post, which the Parish Council raised at the previous meeting as a key asset to Fradley Village. SCC Highways have confirmed their support for these revisions, and we understand the Parish Council have expressed their support too. As such, a planning condition is proposed to be attached to the outline planning permission to secure the delivery of this amended junction arrangement. Item 2, the community building. As noted, the marketing period for the community land has been extended to a period of 2 years, which will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. It is hoped that this will allow for an appropriate end user to be identified Law intend to commence the marketing consultation for this element of the scheme as soon as possible should outline planning permission be granted, and will engage with ward members and the parish council throughout the process. Matter 3, minerals extraction. I can confirm that no sand and gravel extraction will take place at the site. Bloor Homes are a house builder and wish to deliver much needed market and affordable homes as practically possible. Matter 4, drainage issues on Church Lane. Bloor Homes have seen the images of surface water flooding along Church Lane and were first made aware of the issue through our early engagement with the parish council and local community. A key requirement for our residential proposal was to demonstrate to Severn Trent and the Lead Flood Authority that our scheme will mitigate all surface water within the confines of our site and adhere to Greenfield surface water runoff rates. We have confirmed through the detailed technical reports and drawings submitted as part of the planning application that the scheme will not increase flood risk elsewhere within Fradley, and as such, Severn Trent and the Lead Flood Authority have confirmed no objection to our proposals, subject to a detailed drainage scheme being submitted prior to any development commencing at the site. Bloor have also offered to undertake the further survey work and maintenance, which again we're happy to accept a planning condition to that effect. Matter 5, healthcare. We are conscious of the consultation feedback from the local regarding local healthcare provision and capacity, and it's a key concern raised by residents. Bloor are committed to providing a financial contribution towards enhancing healthcare provision. This contribution is in line with the requests made by the NHS Integrated Care Board as a statutory body responsible for assessing and managing healthcare needs within the area. A sum of £206,000 will therefore be provided for the future adaptation, expansion, development and premises within the primary care network. Such an approach is also consistent to the recently approved Horner Avenue scheme. To summarise, Bloor Homes have listened to the 5 key reasons for deferral, making changes to the scheme where appropriate and continue to satisfy all statutory consultees. I'll also add that we're also happy to accept any further ecological conditions if deemed necessary. Looking ahead, should planning permission be granted, Bloor are committed to continuing our engagement with local residents, key stakeholders to help shape the scheme's design and layout as part of any reserve matters planning application. We hope this provides members with the comfort and reassurance that they need to support our residential proposals, and we thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening. Thank you.
Ms Foster. Okay, we've had 3 speakers. On the committee, once again, we various areas that have been raised for continuation. Sorry to Councillor Ashton, you aren't in a position to join in. So, anybody want to? Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to kick off, and can I just say as well, really appreciate the statements made by all 3 speakers, which have been very helpful this evening in trying to establish the facts here, as well as, of course, we've had a very comprehensive report compiled by the planning officers as well. I think we have successfully put to bed the issue which was exercising a lot of minds last time, which was the mineral extraction. I think I felt at the time it was a slight red herring, and I'm now convinced it's a totally red herring. Because if you do some quick sums, the quantum of development on that site potentially is worth, I would say, with a retail price of somewhere between 60 and 80 million pounds. And I don't think that that site would be compromised in terms of taking the gravel extraction, because the value of that, monetary value of that, is insignificant when compared with the value of the houses. But I realise that we are talking about something which could be determined by the county council and not the district council. So I think the minerals extraction, we can forget that one. I think the points made by Councillor Stevenson about badgers, I only mentioned it last time because I was slightly concerned about the fact that it had been mentioned by one of the objectors. Without realising that there was probably slightly more to that than I had imagined. I think the advice which has been suggested by Councillor Stevenson should be taken on board from the Badgers Trust, because badgers, as we all know, are certainly a protected species, and we need to be seen to be taking this matter with the utmost responsibility. Moving on to the next item, which is the healthcare details. I have a slight concern here, and this is a general concern, not just for Fradley, but across the nation actually, and that is that we've experienced this in our own ward at Armitage with Handsacre, where a large development suggested, in fact the developer wanted to have a dedicated GP surgery, a primary care surgery, and it was the healthcare board, the ICB, who said at the time they would rather have the money and invest elsewhere. That principle, I fully understand it, but I still don't think when looked at pragmatically, it answers the problem, because if you have a development, I think having fairly local GP services is very important. And I think expanding something a couple of miles away or 3 miles away doesn't really answer the question about whether primary care is being administered in the best possible way. And £206,000, which I know is the recommended amount, doesn't seem to buy a great deal actually these days in terms of primary care, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. So it does concern me, not just specifically to this application, but I think this is a national problem. And then the other one is the flooding issue, which I don't really know a great deal about, but I will be prepared to listen to local ward members on that. The point made by Councillor Stevenson that the water table is quite high, I think is indicative of potential problems, but of course I will bow to the knowledge of the experts on this. But certainly flooding is an issue, and the area around Fradley is potentially, I think, somewhere which could be badly affected by flooding. But obviously if the lead local flood officer has no problems, then it's not for me to argue with that. It concerns me a little bit, and this is not one of the items raised last time, but just as a little bit of an adjunct to what we've said. The fact that householders now, when they buy new houses, are being compelled, it would seem, to have an air source heat pump in the property is something which I really vehemently disagree with. But then I think anybody who knows me on the council will understand that I have surprised. It is one of my bête noire. We are being forced into adopt heating systems which many of us do not agree with. So on balance, I can't see any real reasons to refuse this, if I'm honest with you. I really, really can't. And that's not to say that I'm not aware of the local issues. It concerns me a little bit that, of course, this is outside the local plan, but this is a situation way beyond our control and is probably a function of not local government, but central government. The very fact that our 5-year housing land supply has been rendered obsolete. We used to have a very adequate 5-year housing land supply, and now we don't because of central government diktats. That again is another one of my bête noire. In fact, I have many bête noire. Those are just two of them. I personally can't find a good reason for refusal, and I feel very strongly that if we were to move refusal of this, Bloor Homes would probably take it straight to the inspectorate, and we would then face potentially high costs, I would imagine, and I don't think it's the place of this planning committee to threaten this council with potential costs for an appeal. So I'm happy, Chairman, as the first speaker, but I'm happy to recommend approval of this. That's not to say I'm unaware of the many, many issues facing local people. I think the generation of traffic is a huge concern, but then I know certainly if we cited highways as being a problem, the inspector would overrule us because with all due respect, county highways, you have not found reason, I don't think, to object to this. So we would not have the benefit of the support of county highways. We'd be on our own on this. And I know for a fact from past experience, we would not, I think, as the idiomatic language would suggest, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. So, Chairman, I'm happy to recommend approval in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in his inimitable fashion, Councillor Marsh has so eloquently covered most of the points I was going to write. Well, all I think of the points, and I would, for the same reasoning, second the motion of approval. Given that, or subject to, I should say, the additional conditions being applied, as the badger sets, we've already heard from the speakers about the survey being carried out on the drainage, but it was mentioned that the actual repairs and works to the drainage should be carried out before any building work should commence. That is a condition as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, heard that. Anyway, Councillor Cattell.
I understand that the applicant will undertake the required maintenance to the existing drainage system along Church Lane. How long? 6 months, a year, 50 years?
I'm not sure whether we lost something in interpretation there. My understanding was it was going to be a survey and then any repairs carried out. And then a little bit later, some of the language changed to someone mentioned continued maintenance. And I'm not too sure if that was what was intended from the offer. I don't know if you had an interpretation on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's, to start, as you say, survey to understand where the issues lie, and then to rectify those issues, say if there's any sort of breaks within the chain, for example. We could articulate it into a condition for the survey and the repairs to be done as part of we were discussing this just before around improvements to condition 12 to expand upon that point, because what condition 12 does is it requires the detailed drainage strategy be prepared, submitted and approved by the council prior to commencement of development. And I think as part of that, it would include an assessment of the drainage situation on Church Lane as it is at the moment. So that survey would feed into the development detailed drainage strategy.
So can the condition actually show that assessment would take place on Church Lane and any necessary work be done? I think it was mentioned before commencement of the build, though before logical time to stop putting issues, commence with the build.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Rather than first occupancy. So yeah, that's a reasonable condition to add into that section.
Yeah, I have to come in now, Chair. Thank you. So in terms of the flooding that's happened on Church Lane, so as county highways, it's probably worth me stressing that from what we can tell, looks like it's highway drainage that hasn't coped with Church Lane itself. Any water that's hit Church Lane, its footways, its surrounding residential area that's gone onto Church Lane. So to a degree, that is county highways' responsibility today, certainly not Bloor Homes. So we would welcome any help from the applicant to have that survey carried out quickly. We welcome their offer to do some maintenance repair works. But if it does turn out it is the highway drainage, then it is our responsibility as a highway authority to drain our own roads. But it should be looked at slightly separately, being connected with the flood risk generally to the site, because Church Lane is north of the site has got its own drainage strategy. I think what the applicant's offering, and again, I'll take Ian's advice, and I've got a flood risk expert colleague with me here, that the offer for the maintenance is more about, find out what it is on the survey. The sooner that's done, the better. There's a responsibility now at County Highways for that to be done. I'm not trying to pretend that flooding is rare these days and storms are rare, but it was a reasonably extreme storm in terms of flood water. And obviously the ground's been saturated for a couple of months now. So I think in terms of clarification on conditions, that's more for Ian and legal. That'd be my input from County Highways.
Adam, welcome, Adam. This is the first time you've been to this committee.
Thanks.
I think it's the first time.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
On the basis that your flood risk expert, and that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
If you've got a view, that'd be brilliant rather than us faffing around.
So, from my understanding, and obviously as statutory consultancy in the planning process on
Yep.
with regards to flood risk and drainage here, correct view the proposed development and the red line boundary and the drainage for that as taking the drainage from within the site and concentrating it to a point and infiltrating it to ground. So I think the existing flooding situation in the village and on Church Lane and any implications with regards to this development are separate to the way it's been addressed in the drainage strategy. But Richard's points I completely concur with, and I have experience of seeing surveys, drainage surveys, CCTV surveys, and required rectification of any compromise to any assets being secured by planning condition in the past. So, I mean, it's not for me to recommend a particular condition, but I do see there being opportunities here potentially to provide betterment to the existing situation in the village and to combine that with this development scheme and the drainage strategy, and that is something that potentially could be secured through a reasonable condition. Yes.
I did have a question for Stuart. It's outside of the red line of the application and not directly related to the application. Is it something that we can put a condition on, rather than we'd like to put a condition on?
I think if we actually linked it to the drainage strategy, Chair, yes, we could.
Okay.
I think that's the important point because we're linking it to the drainage strategy. So that would be my understanding. So
okay,
as a consequence, we could, as part of the drainage strategy condition, we could actually set out what our requirements were.
Right. Question back to Ian then. Is the condition says that the drainage strategy should be in place before first occupation, if I've read that right on number 12. Occupation of a property. Whereas the concept of fixing the issues on Church Lane suggested that happened prior to the construction. Have I got that right?
Yes, so condition 12, as you say, the scheme, which is by scheme, it means the detailed drainage strategy. So the findings of the detailed drainage strategy will be implemented prior to the first occupation, which means that the drainage infrastructure will be there, it'll be ready, it'll be working by the time the first dwellings are occupied. But I take from what you're saying that the survey and the maintenance of Church Lane should be done
prior to the commencement.
So although it ultimately will form part of the overall detailed drainage strategy, because the two, you know, how the site drains and then how its relationship with Church Lane, how that functions, I do see that as being, you know, as colleagues have alluded to, there's the potential for a solution that sorts it all out. And I think that is obviously part of the drainage strategy, which would be implemented on site prior to first occupation. So it might be perhaps a separate condition that deals solely with this point about survey and maintenance, which is a prior to commencement, it just separates it out.
I think it sounds better separating that.
Yeah.
I was going to say any of the speakers, but apparently yes. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I agree what Councillor Salter and Councillor Marshall has been saying here. I think Borough Homes has addressed all the objections we had the last time very well here. And the gestures of goodwill on the drainage in particular. I'd like to see that as a condition that this inspection is done before any work start on the site, because year on year now this is getting very, very bad. And this year so far it's been absolutely terrible down there. That even the young mothers taking children to schools had to go walk through deep water with their prams and pushchairs. It needs to be sorted. We need to know what the problem is now, not wait until the first occupation, because that's when it will start to get worse. We need to have an inspection now and know what's wrong. And there's no reason, if we approve this tonight, that Borough Homes couldn't get on and do that survey very soon, and we find out what the real problems are and how it's going to be dealt with for the first occupation. So I'd like to see a condition that is done ASAP, And the other concern I've always had, and always will until it happens, is the healthcare facility. I think it's appalling that there's only £206. That's not even going to deliver a car parking. And anyway, there is no room to put a car park down there now. It needs a complete new building. But I believe we can't do anything about that. They were a consultee, the ICB. That's what they've asked for. And we were in a position to increase it. Unfortunately, they've asked for that. Law has granted it. And we have no powers, as I understand it, to increase that, unfortunately. So I think Blur has attended to everything well here, but I'd like to see him attend to this flooding, the matter of urgency for us. And I support Councillor Marshall and Councillor Salter's proposals here to accept.
Thank you. It's the ICB that suggests the level at which the funding should be. It's not the developer that suggests how much money they're prepared to give. The money that is put aside is allegedly for infrastructure, and then every person that registers with the surgery, that surgery gets so much per head for each person they then deal with. And unfortunately, we have absolutely no say whatsoever and no leverage over medical services and when they should be provided. We all completely agree with you. Councillor Salter?
Yes, thank you. Just a point on the repair work to the existing drainage system in the highways, and as Richard alluded, that is a highway county council responsibility. Effectively, it's possible that I don't know how the legislation all works, but it's possible that the law could be prevented from working on the highways. So can I suggest that when the survey is carried out and the problems identified, that if they can't actually get their own shovels out and deal with it, that they fund the county council to do the work ASAP, because we know we keep getting stories, oh, the county can't afford it, it'll get done in 5 years or whatever. So if we make sure that is.
I understand to a large extent. I would then have sympathy with the developer, because trying to get county highways and they're aiming to carry out some work at a time when you want them to carry it out is highly unlikely. And if we were to put that condition on, it has to be done beforehand.
I think Chair, I think the other thing I'm concerned about here is that I want to expect law to carry out works which are not necessarily linked to the development. So as a consequence, it's very well.
You just linked it with the survey.
We can link it with the survey, yes, but then if you were talking about large amounts of expenditure to actually carry out the works on Church Lane, I think that can only be then linked to what potentially would be linked to the development itself. So we can't actually put to bed issues which have.
There is no, we can't do anything about the Church Lane flooding.
Right, I think we're getting into a circular argument now. I've got Councillor Marshall and Councillor Cross. We've probably all got views on this. If we can try and keep it to the point, I don't think we're going to solve that particular question. Perhaps the condition should be that we give the power back to highways and our planning officers, senior planning officer, to explore the most appropriate way forward, because I'm sure that if Bloor were to do the drainage work, it would be considerably cheaper than if we went through the county council. Probably shouldn't have said that. I would say that. Sorry, Councillor Marshall.
Chairman, just very quickly, I was just wondering about the viability of Councillor Cross's suggestion for a condition, or pre-commencement condition, in fact. If it were to be proven to be acceptable, then I would second it, but I'm not sure whether it would be a viable option. That was my first question, really. And that was really all I was going to say, was I thought that what Councillor Cross, the Vice Chairman, said made a lot of sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's viable or acceptable. Can I just have some clarification on that, please?
I'm going to you, Stuart. Sorry. I have a view, but
yeah, no, I think councillor Marshall, I think the point is, yes, a pre-commencement condition is workable here. And I think we have to inject some reasonableness into this and proportionality.
Okay.
So as a consequence, there can be a link to law to an extent. So I think pre-commencement, yes, it will work.
Okay. In that case, then, can I just say that I second the point that was made by councillor Cross?
Yeah, Chair, can I just add to that, please? Yeah, what I was asking for there was that Bloor Home do a survey and to discover what the problem is, because nobody seems to be wanting to do that for years now. And the first issue, we need to know what is the problem there and what needs to be done about it. So that could be done tomorrow, even next week. And I don't see any reason why that could not be a condition that's done as soon as possible if we approve it tonight.
Chair, through you, Chair, I'm completely happy with councillor Cross's proposal there. And I think that makes complete sense, because it might be the situation whereby we find it is completely county highways, then deal with it in the appropriate manner.
Richard?
Just looking to clarify some technical issues, Claire, Chair, if that helps really. So in terms of what Amy is responsible for, there's no reason why Bloor Homes itself could not undertake the survey and the drainage repair works without using Amy as a contractor. There'd still be some checking that would be done by myself, colleagues of Adams and others. So it doesn't have to be Amy on site. In terms of any condition, I agree with Stuart's point about timing. The sooner the better. I don't see any reason why that can't be conditioned. And however that's dealt with in planning is good for us. I'm nervous, as is Stuart, about potentially offering a blank cheque where Bloor is on the hook for something that isn't really fair and proper in planning terms. We'd welcome the survey done quickly. If there's any requirements in planning to have Bloor made responsible for some of the financial works that could come out if they were reasonable, that could be done as part of the 278 agreement they'd need to enter into for the highway works on Fradley Lane, etc. So there's a mechanism to do it if members and planners are minded to take that forward.
For you, Chair, I think, I completely agree with Richard. I think the 278 agreement in due course may provide an appropriate mechanism.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else looking to speak, or I'm looking to go to a vote on the recommendation to accept with the conditions, the two badger conditions, which I'm sure the wording will be available at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, if the wording could be made available just by way of email, fine.
And the other one being the Church Lane survey and repair, as just discussed, being a pre-commencement condition.
Yeah.
So, the amendment. I thought I've just got conditions.
I'm just going to check with Stuart. If it's applying a condition, would there not need to be a vote on the addition that first and then a vote on the proposal as amended?
Sorry, are we agreeing to the conditions? Okay. All those in favour of the two badger conditions?
Yeah. You know.
And all of those that are in favour of the Church Lane drainage survey and repair condition? Those conditions. So now we're happy that those are attached to the original recommendation. Thank you. Recommendation. All those in favour of that recommendation now with those two conditions attached?
So you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the speakers. Went very well. I understand a lot of your frustrations, particularly in relation to areas outside of designated areas. Sadly, legislation overrules. I'd say differently, doesn't it? Right, in relation to everyone else that's here, is Stuart I believe welcome back. We had a brief break there while people left, and while we invite in James Fox, who's the lead for enforcement in relation to Lichfield District's building, well, enforcement in various different areas really. This was supposed to fall under the confidential section, but on the basis that it's a report on what is happening within the department, how things are structured and how things work, I felt that it should go into the public domain so that the public can see what progress is being made and what actions are being taken. When we get round to the point where you want to ask a question about a specific enforcement action, I would say, could you save that until we go into the private session, which will be after the update in relation to the reports. And then I'm going to bore you a little bit further afterwards, because I went on a 2-day training course, because we do get trained, a 2-day training course last week. And I've made a number of points of the things that I picked up from that, which was largely sharing frustrations across the country, as far as I could make out. But that'll have to go into the confidential section as well. But I'm going to bore the rest of you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Hi, members. This is the first of what I hope will be twice yearly update for planning enforcement. And I know it's something that probably hasn't been brought to the committee in the past, so I'm looking forward to kind of promoting the service and the achievements that we do have. To provide some context, most of the cases we investigate rarely rise to the service. You're probably aware in terms of the volume. It's mainly the problem long-standing sites that do get looked at, and those that are subject to more formal enforcement notices. And unfortunately, those are the ones that we're generally judged on, which can lead to a sometimes unjustified perception that planning enforcement is slow and quite unresponsive. This is only a fraction of what we actually deal with and what we manage as a team. And this report aims to promote what the wider achievements are of the service, the improvements that have been made over the last 12 months, which I strongly believe have put the service in a really good position to tackle what are the most serious breaches of planning control moving forward. I won't go through the whole report because there's a lot of statistics that are being provided, but I just want to highlight a few of the achievements that we've had. Firstly, the makeup of the team, which for the first time in a long time has 3 full-time qualified planners, alongside a graduate enforcement officer, who also provides an important link between enforcement and conservation. This is a huge shift from a previous over-reliance on contractors and what was a limited permanent members of the team, which resulted in historically high caseloads. There was a lot of handover of cases between officers. There was a lack of consistency across the team, and case numbers had risen to in excess of 200 in some cases for certain officers, which is completely unsustainable and something that needed to change. So the priority for the team over the last 12 months has been to reduce individual case numbers per officer. And following the introduction of a new online complaint form, which was only introduced in April, and a hell of a lot of hard work and dedication from the team, now seeing case numbers per officer of around about 50 to 75, which is a massive reduction and makes the workload a hell of a lot more manageable. Total number of cases investigated and subsequently closed since introducing new ways of working, a little over 12 months ago, is 371 cases that we've investigated. And this compares to a total of 438 cases that we actually received during that time. And that they're cases that we've actually registered. We receive a hell of a lot more that we don't register, but we still action accordingly. The current live case load now, as a result of that performance, now sits around about 190 cases. And the target is to reduce that to around about 150 during 2026. We've also looked at new ways of handling the receipt of new inquiries. As I mentioned, we have a new complaint form, which since April this year, when it was introduced, has seen the number of new cases registered reduced by 25%. This is largely down to the new form providing additional guidance and support to the customers. And I can only encourage members to use this form wherever possible and share the link to the form with their constituents wherever you can. We've also introduced new novel ways of actually investigating and working with technology. We've invested in drones for officers to fly over difficult to access sites, which is a fantastic tool for us for recording evidence where we may not have been able to gain access in the past. We've also invested in body cameras. So when we go on site to investigate compliance, we've got body cameras attached to us record that evidence there and then, rather than having to write up that evidence afterwards, and it's perfect for when we have to go to court. It's recognised in the report that the number of enforcement notices served during the last year is relatively low, and that has been a conscious decision, but also it shouldn't be a reflection on poor performance. Ultimately, a lot of what we deal with is via negotiation, and I think it's important to recognise the negotiation element of it as being a more successful element, and notices should only ever be served as a last resort. So when we getting out positive outcomes without serving notices, that should be looked at as a more positive outcome than serving more notices. It's expected now case numbers have been reduced. The number of notices will increase during 2026, and we were obviously going to look at that as well. But I've got a strong belief the team is now ahead of the curve in terms of plan enforcement practice. And if the trend continues, we've got a great opportunity to focus on the more serious breaches, and for the first time, look at more proactive forms of enforcement as well. For example, unauthorised adverts, which are causing a lot of issues, and in terms of targeting how we deal with those, and potentially sites as well. But I look forward to providing further updates in due course. And I'm looking to provide further insight as well in terms of looking at providing you information on how we actually close cases, to give you an idea, and also a breakdown in terms of the distribution of cases across Lichfield, across the district, so we can see where we've got certain hotspots of complaints and those sorts of things, because I want to be really proactive in the way we deal with things. Take any questions?
Right. In relation to the work that's being done, I think it's excellent. Thank you very much for coming tonight and telling us that we've got a fully formed department. I remember just a few years ago when we were saying we can't find anyone to do planning enforcement. So to find that we've got 3 undergraduate entry, and you feel that we're on the top of the curve and making more progress, is absolutely brilliant. Before I go into the questions session in relation to particular properties, if someone's got anything to say not specifically aimed at a property or a problem, that's right to tell.
What do you mean by an unauthorized advertisement? Like someone putting up a for sale sign somewhere without getting permission, or what?
What do we do with?
What do you mean by an unauthorized
advertisement? Yeah, well, that can range. It can be all sorts of things. So we receive a lot of complaints about banners that have been attached to street furniture, for example. That essentially falls under highways legislation. But there are certain powers in terms of fixed penalty notices that we are looking to consider as well under our delegation. But for sale signs is the one that you raised specifically. Again, they tend to be attached to street signs or on public land. Yeah, which again is kind of falls between the gaps in terms of, well, who enforces that? Because if we were to serve a planning enforcement notice, we're essentially serving against the Highways Authority, because that it's on public land. So we would expect the primary legislation would be for that to be dealt with in terms of trespass. It's illegally displayed on our land, essentially, which is we're trying to work towards working with our colleagues in highways and getting a quick and effective way of dealing with those things, because we do get a lot of complaints about them. I understand they are a frustration for residents as well, especially when they build up in certain areas.
Councillor Marshall?
Yes, Chairman. Just to say, to echo your words a little bit, I think it's really great that we can now look towards a well-organised enforcement team. I remember some years ago when we weren't able to say that we had that facility here at Lichfield, and so it's very reassuring to know that we have. We've just sat through a planning committee meeting, and we have planning officers working assiduously 5 days a week, and 7 days a week in some cases probably. And of course, there's only a point in having a planning protocol if people adhere to it. If people can just please themselves and do as they wish, then the whole planning protocol falls apart. So it's vitally important that we not only we have a means of enforcing planning restrictions, but we're seen to be doing it, because otherwise developers and individuals will think that they can please themselves, they can do as they please. And if we're not careful, we create a huge problem for ourselves, because if they think there is no enforcement, it will simply give them the opportunity to do as they please. And then before we know it, we've got a planning system which is completely out of control. So I think having a proper, meaningful and well-equipped planning enforcement department is absolutely vital for the whole of the planning process. And I think actually it probably gives the planning officers a great reassurance to know that the work they're doing is being backed up by someone who takes the law very seriously. So thank you very much for what you do, and your team as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of add to that, one of the responsibilities we do have is for tree preservation orders and the enforcement of those as well. And we've had quite a few of those being undertaken, unauthorised works, and we have about 3 or 4 prosecutions going on for that as well. And again, like you say, a ripple effect in terms of being seen to enforce is vitally important. And hopefully that's a preventative measure rather than having to deal with things. And yeah, so I totally agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Just a couple of questions. I mean, obviously the report is very impressive. Obviously going to have a lot more developments in this area. It's going to double, and you've got a relatively small team to cope with all this. Do you think you've got adequate resources, or would you have? I know you're going to say no to that, but realistically, do you feel you need some more stuff?
I don't think nobody's ever going to say we've got adequate resources, but we do have a stronger team than we've had in some time at Lichfield. I personally have been at Lichfield for 12 months. During that time, we've now recruited a further half an officer post plus a graduate post. So when I started, we had 1.5 officers, and that has now increased. So we've essentially doubled the capacity within the team. I have to recognise though that in terms of potential housing developments coming forward, Section 106s and those sorts of things, I know we don't have a monitoring officer within the council. That could be something which I would suggest is a gap within resources, to have that dedicated resource to Section 106 monitoring. But yeah, as things stand, I'm fairly satisfied, but time will tell.
A second question related to the decreased number of cases, which I think you've attributed partly to the launch of the new form in April 25, and you say that educates the public on what is and is not enforceable. I'm sure that's correct, but I just wonder, have we done any checks with the public to make sure that's correct and it's not actually the form that's putting them off in itself? There's some people that see an electronic form and they just say, I'm not going there. Have we actually checked with the...
We have got statistics. We've got statistics, and this isn't the first time I've introduced that. This something similar was done in Birmingham when I worked in Birmingham for 10 years, and we also saw around about 40% reduction in cases there as well. And essentially we have got some statistics which say the number of hits to the website remains constant, and the number of hits to the form remains constant. However, we can see certain customers falling away at certain stages. We'd like to think that those are stages where there's certain links and information provided within the form. It goes direct to the planning portal, or goes direct to the planning inspectorate, or other service areas, which then provide that guidance and education that's needed for them to self-diagnose, essentially, because a lot of the stuff we were having was a lot of community development inquiries. We're not here to police permitted development. Permitted development is an allowance across the country that householders, businesses are allowed to adhere to. So if we can avoid policing permitted development, if people can, if customers and constituents can look into that online to see, well, my neighbour has built this extension, but they are fully entitled to have that extension without having to go through the council, that reduces the number that we have to investigate, because ultimately once we've registered a case, we're then duty bound to investigate it. That means we have to carry out a site visit, look into it further, and that all adds time. Ultimately, when we kind of know what the outcome may be from the outset, if it's permitted development, we also encourage photographs to be sent in. This wasn't really pushed before, but we're asking customers now to send us photographs, and at least then it gives us a good initial kind of opportunity to appraise things, and potentially then we can go back to the customers without having to register complaints to say, based on the information you're providing us, we're in a strong position here to say that this is going to be permitted development and therefore further investigation isn't needed. So yeah, we're fairly comfortable that it isn't a form that's pushing people away. It's a form that's advising and informing people to make judgments themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much to the public who've listened in so far. Thank you for watching. We're now going to switch off the live broadcast because publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. We're going to look at some of the individual cases. The public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, which would involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 4 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972.